This is Tell Me Something Good About Retail with Bob Phibbs, the retail doctor.
I decided to start another business by default because I had no other options. And then when I was like, what kind of business should I start? I had only accounting and finance experience or a little bit of retail fashion experience from this business that failed. And I was like, look, if I'm going to create my own future, I'm definitely not going to choose accounting.
Welcome to Tell Me Something Good About Retail with your host, Bob Phibbs, the champion for a more human connection in retail for over 30 years as a retail doctor. Bob is the authority on brick-and-mortar retail across the world, who works with some of the biggest luxury brands to independent retailers of all sizes.
Hey, it's Bob Phibbs, the retail doctor, with my second best of podcast. As a retail speaker, author, sales coach, and podcaster, I meet a lot of interesting people. So I'm taking several clips from my 200-plus episodes so you get to meet some of the early guests and some of the best stories. So let's get going. I keynoted the Retail Excellence event in Dublin, and I met Patrick Burke, CEO of his namesake men's clothing store in County Clare, along with his wife, Imelda, who has her own restaurant right across the street. I spoke to them both about Patrick being the fourth-generation owner the day after he received a prestigious Retail Excellence Award.
Well, I got a totally flabbergasting surprise last night at the retail dinner, that our family business is 90 years in business this year.
90 years, okay.
90 years. I'm the third generation in the business, and I'm behind the counter for the last 55 years at this stage. But I was awarded a beautiful plaque. And it really knocked me for six. I wasn't expecting it in any shape, make, or form. I got beautiful compliments and accolades, and that knocked me for six for a while. But after, when I got my legs back again, I was totally delighted.
Well, you should be. And who is this lovely woman next to you?
This lady here is my wife, Imelda.
Yeah.
Tell us about what do you do and how?
Okay, so we're married over 30 years.
30 years.
So I support Patrick all the way. I'm actually a home economics teacher myself, so I'm very into food as well, Bob. I love Irish food and local food, and I run a restaurant on the Wild Atlantic Way, which I'm sure all your listeners would be familiar with in Ireland. So Patrick actually started my business for me when I left college. He gave me a loan of £400.
Really?
For my business.
£500.
Oh,
I've never
seen he's got that. I love that.
Yeah,
good. And so, and you both love customer service.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, they were at my keynote yesterday,
Yes,
and we just bonded over yes, that's exactly what we're talking about. But in a world where everybody's talking about it's all about technology and it's all about knowing, your smartphone, all that, you both have a different version of that, right?
I'd say we probably still have a lot of old school ideas and old school habits, and that which we were brought up with. Because both our parents were in business before us in different businesses, and we were just brought up that you appreciate your customer. Your customer is not alone your friend or a way you make a living out of. He's your next door neighbour. He's the guy you meet in the street. He's the fellow you meet at a football match. He's the guy that you tug out, for a wedding, for a funeral, for any event. So he's
not something to take money from.
No. The money is just it's part of the transaction, fine, but it's not the major part of the transaction. It's the familiarity, the friendships, and the acquaintances that are built up over the years.
And you talked about it as the spider web. The spider web of community.
Yes.
Cobweb, excuse me.
A cobweb of in the community, and that families are intertwined in smaller areas. They're related, or they're friendly, or whatever. And businesses then are a part of the network of the community and the fabric of the community, and they all cross at different points, and that's
what keeps the community strong.
Exactly,
right?
Very much so. Yeah, and if one part falls down, if families maybe die out, or a business closes down, or whatever, there's a hole in that web, and it takes a long time for that hole to be repaired.
That's right, but it's up to all of you to prepare that.
Everybody comes
right?
together, though.
Yeah, I think that's
support each other. Yeah,
I think that's great. And you said you started out at 7 years old to the knees of your great grandfather. Was that it?
Well, my granny and my mother. And my mother had a grocery store. My granny had a store. My granny was had the men's wear shop. Her husband had just passed away the year I was born, actually. And so, she in her own right was a particularly strong woman as well. During the war, we had rationing here in Ireland, and she went around the country buying butter and eggs and exchanging them for tea and sugar from the towns. She was one of the first women in.
She's an entrepreneur.
Yeah, she was in her own way,
She made cakes.
And wedding cakes, everything like that. Yeah.
Like the clothes shop, maybe it wasn't that busy, and he'd make the cakes.
Wow.
Supplement. That was his granny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And my mother then had the grocery shop in Key Seaside Resort, and that was a very busy resort at that time with families coming from Limerick, the city, close enough to us. And then she, for 4 months of the year, she opened at 7 in the morning. She closed at 11 at night. The staff.
Wow.
The girls.
I think you have long hours in a mall. That's a long time.
Exactly. So the girls who worked in the shop with my mother left at 8 o'clock. So family members plowed in the other 3 hours. So even though I was 7, 8, 9, and 10 and 11, I worked from 8 till 11 at night.
Wow. And we talked about that we both, all three of us, share that, starting off with that kind of a janitor, right? I mean, that's the stuff that we still notice today. It's stuff that nobody else would notice unless you did that job.
That's right.
I think that makes...
That's true, right. The chewing gum stuck to the footpath outside the door.
Cleaning up.
Exactly. The cobweb that might be in the corner of the window.
But they notice that. See, that's the thing. Yeah. Customers notice that.
They do, and I would notice it. And we're the guys. We're the people that end up cleaning it, because everybody else, if it would pass it.
Absolutely. And then pretty soon you look around and you're like, my store looks terrible.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's my fault. Right? That's right. What's the biggest and best advice you think you ever received?
God, I suppose, my mother always had the thing: be honest in business. Never ever do your customer wrong.
That's why they've been in business 90 years. Never, ever do your customer wrong. And now from Ireland to Mexico, when I spoke to Ralph Simons, who was then the CEO of Tane and the former CEO of Sheppard USA. I asked him about how he got started and grew into the luxury watch business.
So my career started in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, which is where I grew up. And after college and hospitality management, I joined our luxury watches and jewelry family company, which was started by my father. And this is where I dealt with retail for the first time professionally. At the time, we were distributors for brands like IWC, Hermès, and Frédéric Constant. We had a quite diverse portfolio of brands. And in my role as sales manager, I learned what is needed to be successful in retail. And for me, the most important element is training, because I learned there's something very powerful you can do in retail, which is influencing the client's choice.
That's a great point, especially with those very diverse brands that you had.
Yes.
Isn't it easy to come up with one that you personally like, and then without training, the salesperson just sells what they like, right?
Yes, that can happen. Or the salesperson just sells what the client asks for. But because the salespeople can influence the choice of the client, this is where the training comes in. Because if one brand is stronger at training the people than the other brand, then especially in a multi-brand environment, there's a good chance for the salespeople to actually sell what they want to sell and not sell what the client initially comes in for, or what might be the expected thing to sell.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point, Ralph, because if I just give you what you ask for and you leave my store and then you're going to brag to a buddy and the guy's like, why'd you get that? And you're like,
yes,
well, that's what I thought was the best. And they're like, yeah, no, this is what the best is. It's what I have. Ultimately, you fail and they probably don't come back to you again, right?
Exactly. I mean, you're not really selling if you're just giving the client what he wants. I think it's your job as a salesperson in retail to actually let the client explore what else is out there. And maybe it's not the most common brand or the most well-known brand, but maybe there's other brands that offer something unique that you don't know of, or maybe something better at a better price, or something handmade versus something made by machines. So I think that's the power of a salesperson in retail, that you can let the client explore and show him or her what's out there.
The power of a retail salesperson, you know that's what I believe in, and the idea of letting the client explore and show them to build sales. Next up, Jane Liu with her story about how she founded Showpo and currently is on the Australian version of Shark Tank. She's also the co-founder of Like-Minded Bitches and goes by the handle The Lazy CEO. We caught up with her on the beginning of her ascent to fame and influence.
Yeah, I studied accounting and finance at university, and what I quickly learned was like it might be interesting in theory, but like in practice, it is so boring. So boring. I actually worked at KPMG and Ernst & Young, which is two of the big four accounting firms, and I just absolutely hated it. And I hated my job. The whole time I had fake spreadsheets open, but I was secretly on Facebook. And you just hit Alt Tab anytime anyone walks by.
I love that. Unless I'm listening to this at another retailer and I realize, hey, someone's hustling while they're at work here, but still.
Yeah, that's true. And so I was quite lucky that I got into it's called a cadetship program, which meant that it's quite exclusive, and it means you start working full time and studying part time, which meant I started working straight out of high school, because I can't believe this, but I was so eager to climb that corporate ladder that I wanted a head start and to get into it as soon as possible. But what was great was that I also learned at a relatively young age, when people, I think most people graduate and then they start a job and then they realize I hated it. They may hate their job. I realized I wanted a career change around the same time I finished uni. And so that's when at that time, my friend actually came to me with a business idea. And this is my first business. That was to run pop-up stores. So we ran these pop-up stores in underutilized locations, which basically are bars when they're not busy. And we sold things from emerging designers.
Okay.
And then we quickly learned, and this was a really important business lesson I learned, because at the time I was like, hey, we're going to do this business model slightly differently, and we're going to make millions. But then we quickly learned that, maybe no one was doing this business model because it doesn't work. And so you learned that no matter how much hard work and dedication and passion that might go into something, if the business model doesn't work, it's never going to work. If no one wants the product you're selling, it's never going to work.
Well,
sounds obvious, but...
Well, but I attribute that let's face it, I think you're incredibly smart and you're incredibly quick to react to that, because there are so many people that will stick with a concept and they say, well, if I just have now, and admittedly, as the retail doctor, this is my 25th year, and there was a certain amount of when I started, that is a matter of kind of plugging it out. But I think it's all changed. Certainly in the last 3 or 4 years, I think you can get your metrics really quick and say, there's no market for this, or it's too hard, it doesn't scale, it's too expensive. Would you agree, Jane?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there you are, you're opening these pop-up stores in what are kind of bars. And where does that moment come when you say, like, this isn't cutting it?
Well, it was my business partner told me that she didn't want to do it. So I actually wanted to turn these pop-up stores into an online store. I spent a month taking photos of everything, building my own website. Stupidly, it was a Wix website, which is built on Flash. So it was useless anyway, because it's not mobile compatible. But she told me that she didn't want to do the business anymore. Kind of completely screwed me over at the time, which again, like you said, it's great because she made us fail fast.
Yeah.
Because we realized that. So I actually quit my job for this business. I quit out of Ernst. It was in the middle of a global financial crisis. And I think what also urged me to quitting was I was like, I should probably quit before they fire me, because I was so bad at my job and they were starting to make people redundant. During the GFC. But what was done was I probably should have stuck around for a redundancy payment and used it as seed capital.
And then you could have built your business quicker. I got you.
I know. But anyway, damn it. But anyway, it all worked out. So spoiler alert, it all worked out. So all of a sudden, there's me at the age of 18 with a job. And so, my parents and I, we immigrated from China to Australia when I was 8. And they did that so that I could have the chance of like a better future with more job and financial security. So having achieved this at 18, having everything, all of a sudden I threw all of that away. Like I studied, for my parents, I studied the thing that they wanted me to study. I got the job that they wanted, I had everything. I threw it all away. All of a sudden, no job, unemployed, business has failed. I lost all my life savings, which wasn't that much, but with the first business, I could not have been more rock bottom at this stage. And so I had no choice but to start a business because it was in the middle of the global financial crisis. No one was hiring. And so I decided to start another business by default because I had no other options. And then when I was like, what kind of business should I start? I had only accounting and finance experience or a little bit of retail fashion experience from this business that failed. And I was like, look, if I'm going to like create my own future, I'm definitely not going to choose accounting. So that's kind of how by default I did retail.
That's right. You're going to open an accounting office. Okay, that's not going to happen.
No, definitely not. So people say, how come you started this show pro? I'm like, well, it kind of happened by default, but also I think like, what with one door closes, others open. And it's literally, that's why I always tell people just to start because, business is all about being a good business person means being a good problem solver.
Yes.
So it's just literally, you just start and then you adapt and you learn and you quickly evolve. So that's kind of what happened. What was the crappy thing, I guess, was, because like I said, my parents gave up, they keep guilt tripping me that they gave up everything to move to Australia for me, that I couldn't tell them I threw it all away. So for the first 6 months, I actually pretended to go to work. But
wait, you're living at their house, right?
I was living with them. Yeah. And so, and I'm an only child. So all the eyes are on me. But just to paint you a picture, I would have to get up early and, I'm not a morning person. So getting up early when you're unemployed is like possibly the worst thing ever for a non-morning person. I know.
You could be doing a comedian's riff on this. You could have been a stand-up. It's pretty funny, but
I really could. Just go to the I'll take this material to the Comedy Cellar tomorrow.
It would be great.
But then it actually gets worse because then I have to put on my suit, which is like a proper the penguin suit,
right.
I guess. And then my mum actually works in the city, so I used to get the bus in the city with her, so I couldn't just peel off and go to the park. I'd actually have to go to the city. And I ended up carrying around an empty laptop bag because I'm like, well, this laptop is useless and heavy.
Wow. You were dedicated. Well, and that's true around the world. I think kids don't want to let their parents down and are willing to keep that alive because, see, here's the thing. I'm a baby boomer. I'm 61, and we are much more stressed and we worry about the future. And I think, I hate sounding old here, but young people have totally got the message that you can do anything and why the hell not, right? So why not be an entrepreneur and why not lead with my strengths and why not try it? And wow, I failed. Well, big deal. I guess I'll just do another one. And I really respect that with you because, you are kind of this force of nature when I first met you a couple of weeks ago. But you're a smart cookie too, because you've mastered this idea of who your girl is. You're not going after, I'm going to go after the Macy's girl, or I'm going to go after XYZ. You know who she is. And when I see it in your social media, I could certainly see a young woman saying, yes, I want to be her. And you've captured in such a way that maybe you've created this young woman who is really put together. And the sense I get is you kind of can go from one look to another really easily. Is that kind of part of what you show?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it kind of all just happened very organically. And I think, like you said, because I don't have a fashion background. I'm not a fashion girl. I'm actually just selling to girls like me to and I think I see everything, every problem that we're trying to solve from the eyes of a common, our consumer.
Yeah.
And not with my own ideas, already in mind.
I love that idea of knowing who your customer is and not just your own ideas of who they are and what they have. Do you get the theme of this episode? Customer centricity is how founders stay sharp. One of the biggest buzzwords in retail of 2025 is retail as a community center. Many of the best examples, though, are retail communities don't talk about community at all. They just go about their business, having fun within their subcultures and building businesses around that idea. Such businesses as Night Watch Games remain the best and typically least cited example of this. That's why I was glad to speak to Porrick Mulgrew, Him and his wife Brenda turned their backgrounds of serving in the Army to serving their community at Night Watch Games in San Antonio, Texas. In fact, the Game Manufacturers Association awarded them Store of the Year. He has some thoughts on what's going on in retail and some ideas for his peers in the industry.
One of the critiques I have of my peers in the industry is they're not setting up their stores, their retail spaces, to invite those people in. They're still catering towards the old school gamer, and that community can seem very closed off and very
Well, it's
cliquish.
limited, isn't it? I mean, you're looking at you're trying to grow the whole pie rather than I'm going to take care of my little slice and be happy with it. And that's a very big difference. Those of you who've known me on the podcast, that's the smart thing that most of the business we've talked to over the years have embraced, the idea that it means more for everybody, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. You have to realize that the pie is growing as well. It's a huge exploding industry. And because the genres are exploding and becoming so much more accessible, is you have to be the conduit for those people to take that first step into this otherwise strange culture. And so Night Watch Games does a really good job of that. One, we visually put you into a setting where you see things that you can relate to via the mass media of Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings and those kind of fantastic stories. But then as customer service representatives, we facilitate the education and the adoption of the culture in a nice, easy way so that you feel welcomed, you feel understood, you're taken care of, you feel safe. And so a lot of the demographic that doesn't feel those things in normal retail spaces or other game stores, they gravitate towards Night Watch Games. And if they are within our value system, this is their home. And the amount of loyalty is so robust, is so profound that I'll tell you some stories about how profound it can be, but it's unheard of to see these things happening in other retail stores. It's now a family. It's a community that's got bonds like you would not expect to happen in a game store.
To be invitational rather than expecting the newbie to rise to your level, you want to bring them along with you. And I think that's the key to any endeavor that's going to be successful, right?
Yeah, we almost literally will hold your hand as you enter the store. And we will introduce you to the people that we think that you will find interesting. And all those people that are already established in the community, they intrinsically know that they're there to take care of you as well. And it's a selfish thing on their part. The more gamers that they bring in and nurture within their community, that's more play people that they have to participate in the games that they want to play. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy for them to really take care of their own types.
So would I want to play someone different most of the time? Or do I want to play the same guy because he's a fun guy to play with and I never know quite what his strategy is going to be? Or do you figure people out pretty quick? Like, I don't know. I'm just curious because it's not like chess to me or checkers. There's a lot more involved in your games, I think, than bluffing and those kind of things. There's a lot more.
Yeah, it's pretty profound. On my own podcast, which is Night Watch Games Podcast, you can find that out there.
Go ahead.
Yeah, there you go. We actually talk about that idea is why do people play with the people they do? And there's several answers, but one of the dominating answers was that people play with the people that they do because of shared values, which doesn't sound like that doesn't fit with gaming at all, but it's really about people across the table sharing themselves through the narrative of a game. And the game becomes very secondary. The primary dynamic at the table is people sharing themselves with other people and enjoying a story or some kind of event. And you find that at the end of the gaming session, the thing that people remember is who they played with and what they were about, and they barely remember the game itself.
I love that idea. They barely remember the game. They remember the people. That's true of all of you who sell something in a retail store. Now, before we get too far, let's take a word from our sponsor, SalesRx Online Retail Sales Training, created by yours truly. Hey, it's Bob again. I'm not only your host, but also the founder of the SalesRx Online Retail Sales Training Program. How many sales that should have been yours walked out your front doors today? You know, with shoppers being more discerning about where and when they shop, you need to convert more lookers to buyers. And SalesRx is the perfect solution to make training memorable. It's bite-sized, it can fit easily into your schedules. Don't tell me you don't have time to train. If you can give them time to take a break, you have time for them to train. Now, the training builds from some of the quickest ways to engage shoppers to the most advanced. Everything is planned so you can implement your sales training program with a click of a button. And there's a reason we're on 4 continents training thousands, because SalesRx is scalable. Everybody learns the same new skills that will grow your sales. In fact, 83% of users report a double-digit increase in their sales within 6 months. Wouldn't you like that to be your story? Visit SalesRx to learn more and set up a call with me to see how we can help. That's SalesRx.com. Now back to the broadcast. Finally, we have Nate Woodbury, a YouTube producer of over 30 YouTube channels. I asked him to create excellent videos, and he shared some of his secrets of how to not give away the gold information. Listen up, video producers.
Okay, so on the topic of how to get rid of strep throat without antibiotics. So this is something, it's kind of a home remedy.
Okay.
And if kind of the wrong way to start out that episode would just be to let me demonstrate. I'd say, okay, welcome back. Today we're talking about how to get rid of strep throat without antibiotics. So let's go in the kitchen and grab some fresh garlic, some raw honey, and some cayenne pepper. And when you mix that together and take that, that's going to get rid of strep throat. So if I start the video that way, I've already given away the gold, and I'm not really going to have a whole lot to talk about. But the disadvantages of that is it doesn't allow any relationship building. I mean, they found me and then they leave, right? They got their answer and they have no idea who I am. They don't even know the credibility of this remedy. They don't know how, the ratios, or they don't know how often they should take it or if there's any side effects. So let me demonstrate a better example. All right, as we dive into this topic of how to get rid of strep throat without antibiotics, let's first discuss why we might want to consider an alternative to antibiotics. Then we're going to look at 3 ingredients. You probably have these in your kitchen. So we'll talk about each one of them and how each one is a natural antibacterial and a natural antiviral. Then we'll make it. We'll talk about dosage. And I'll wrap up this video with a story about my son when he was really young. He had a high fever and he had strep throat. We used this remedy, and he had a side effect that you're going to want to know about. So let's dive right in. So just by...
What is that side effect? Hold it. Yeah.
I mean, do you see how my goal was to create a whole bunch of curiosity about kind of a table of contents about what I'm going to be talking about in the video. And so you could see this is probably going to be a 10-minute episode. There's an appropriate amount of stuff that we're going to be talking about that's super valuable. And I would come away like, yeah, if I watch this full 10 minutes, I should know the answer to this question inside and out. So,
which is so much better than thinking, all right, I've got a 1-minute video, I need to make it 10. In a lot of ways, you're doing kind of what we sometimes like using HubSpot, like a pillar page, or you're doing it kind of like a blog in some ways, where you have isolated it out and given us these scenes. So I think that certainly makes it better. What is your thought about using it like a teleprompter? Is it better to have a teleprompter that I'm, trying to go through and remember, okay, so I've got this and this and this, or should I just wing it and then kind of cut it together, or should I do it live? Is there any value to one or the other?
So I highly recommend just outlining your talking points, not using a script, and therefore you won't need a teleprompter. And there's no reason to do it live either. And this takes all the pressure off. So if I've got my notes in front of me, and I think, oh yeah, that's the title of the video, that's all I have to remember. I look at the camera and I say, hey, welcome back. Today we're talking about blank. And I give the title of the video, maybe give them, one hook about, by the end of this video, you'll understand blank. Then I pause, look down at my notes. Oh yeah, I was going to talk about garlic. All right, look back up. All right. So, and then I talk about garlic for a minute or so, pause, look down. Oh yeah, I was going to share that side effect, let me look back up. And so I'll take a step back. It takes all the pressure off of having to memorize and remember what comes next. Oftentimes we jump ahead too quickly and we forget some of the things that we wanted to say. But if we know that, I'm just going to cover this one point, I'm going to, wrap it up and put a bow on it before I move on, then I pause, look down at my notes. It actually does several things. I mentioned it takes the pressure off during filming. It's a game changer, but it has a good cadence in the video because you're talking about one thing and you finish, and then you're talking about another thing and you finish. So it works wonders for several reasons that way. Another disadvantage to using a teleprompter is it takes a huge amount of time to write a script for a 10-minute episode. For me, if it's something I know inside and out, I talk about it all the time, then I might be able to write a script in about an hour for a 10-minute video. I'm kind of a perfectionist with words, and that's a lot of brain power. Like it's mentally exhausting. If it's a lesser, it's a topic that I don't talk about as frequently, it might take me a couple hours just to write one video script. Now
that's what stops people, right? Because you start to catastrophize it. Like, oh, I've got to have all this and I've got to do all that. And then you just say, well, I don't need to. And I think what you're saying is there are ways to get through it. Okay, well, that's this episode. If you want to hear the full episodes, you can scroll through the playlist to find the guest name. In the meantime, remember we're about as happy as we make our minds up to be. Retail gives you the chance to change somebody's life with a warm greeting, an engaging sales presentation, and permission to treat themselves. In turn, though, don't forget they give you a chance to tap into their buying energy and feel what it's like to splurge. Don't forget, retail is a two-way street. Until the next time, I'm Bob Phibbs, the Retail Doctor.
You've been listening to Tell Me Something Good About Retail with Bob Phibbs, the Retail Doctor. As a listener, you can receive free information and guides when you visit retaildoc.com and sign up for our exclusive weekly newsletter. Thanks for being with us. Remember to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you like to get your podcasts. To virtually bring Bob to all of your crew and associates, check out www.salesrx.com.